Caleb teetered on the edge of divorce 3 times. The first time, his mother came to help take care of the child for just a week. In that short period, she bumped her head twice and suffered a scalding on her arm. By the second mishap, Ellie, Caleb's wife, was already showing signs of displeasure. When their son's arm got burned, Ellie exploded at Caleb like a madwoman, venting her frustration late at night. "Is this how you grew up? It's a miracle you've survived this long," she ranted at Caleb, blaming him and his mother in every sentence. Caleb's mother stood there looking helpless, explaining that it wasn't intentional and that looking after a child for a day was quite exhausting, especially for someone of her age. Caleb defended his mother, telling Ellie that she should respect her elders and if she was worried, she could ask her own mother to come and see if she could do any better. Ellie's parents had separate families after their divorce, so they couldn't come to her aid. Caleb's intentional jab hit a nerve, and Ellie, in a fit of rage, threw things around and kicked. She accused Caleb of being a useless jerk who couldn't handle family responsibilities. Caleb's mother, with a tearful plea, tried to mediate, admitting fault and offering apologies. She even attempted to kneel down, but Caleb quickly pulled her up, telling Ellie not to take advantage of the situation. Caleb's mother declared that it was all her fault and promised to leave the next day. She insisted that, being an old woman, she didn't want to cause trouble and suggested Caleb and Ellie not fight and become a laughingstock in the neighborhood. The elderly lady efficiently packed her belongings and left Caleb's house early the next morning, never to return. To the outside world, it was later explained as a case of poor eyesight and being disliked by her daughter-in-law, but that's another story. With a toddler just learning to walk, Ellie struggled to balance work and family. Eventually, she had to quit her job to take care of the child. Caleb didn't mind the resignation as long as it meant less arguing about the child. However, Ellie continued to resent him, calling him lazy and complaining about the overwhelming workload. Caleb couldn't comprehend how having a child transformed a woman into someone entirely different, sloppy and nagging. He believed Ellie thought her complaints and grievances would earn her sympathy and understanding from him. Instead, it only made him want to escape. Around that time, some young colleagues rented a house near the company, sharing the cost. Caleb joined them, telling Ellie to focus on taking care of the child while he took care of himself. In his mind, living separately meant less burden on Ellie, both mentally and physically. Living with the young guys was a lot more relaxed than being at home. They enjoyed evenings of skewers and card games, carefree and easygoing. Ellie protested for a while, but Caleb let her be. As he predicted, she gradually quieted down. With a child in the picture, even the most tumultuous woman could be tethered tightly. The second time, it was still because of the child. Caleb had no idea that having a child could be so troublesome, turning their once peaceful home into a chaotic mess. It seemed like all those celebrity divorces happened after having children. No matter how everyone was doing, the problems they faced were almost the same. Once their child started attending kindergarten, with 3 meals a day provided by the school, Ellie found it much easier. She teamed up with a mom from the neighborhood, became an agent for a diaper brand, and the two of them went out every day for promotions, selling products on social media. "You just think I don't make money, so you look down on me, right?" Ellie complained. Caleb felt helpless. Women, after becoming mothers, always had so many inexplicable thoughts. They often adopted a victim mentality, feeling self-pity and thinking they had paid a huge price. With determination, Ellie did well in selling diapers, almost not needing to ask Caleb for money anymore. Caleb let her be, thinking that it gave her something to do, diverting her attention. It also reduced some financial pressure on him. With some extra money in hand, Caleb occasionally spent $100 or so on flowers for Ellie on her birthday or Chinese Valentine's Day. She would be overjoyed, as if Caleb now cared for her because she was making money. Women's minds were simple, easy to please. Caleb thought the state was not bad. One argument arose because their child got scratched on the cheek by another child at kindergarten. The child wasn't gentle, and by the time Ellie rushed over, a large piece of flesh on the child's face had been torn, a gruesome sight. Ellie caused a scene at the kindergarten, confronting the other child's parents and demanding compensation. Distressed by the injury, Ellie insisted that the other parents and the kindergarten write a guarantee. If the child ended up with a scar, they would be responsible for it, including the subsequent cost of scar removal. The other parents thought Ellie was making a big deal out of nothing and argued back. Ellie shouted back with all her might. The kindergarten's principal, teachers, and even the financial staff, all came over. Ellie, feeling outnumbered, called Caleb to come and deal with it together. The school's suggestion was to go to the hospital for an examination, and the other parents would compensate for medical expenses. Ellie disagreed, stating that the wound was deep, and there was a possibility of scarring, which was a lifelong matter. The other parents and the kindergarten were required to write a guarantee. If the child ended up with a scar, they would be responsible for it, including the cost of scar removal. The other parents felt Ellie was making a fuss, scolding her, and Ellie shouted back. The principal took Caleb aside first, sincerely apologized, and explained that at this age, children were exploring desires and establishing rules. It wasn't intentional, and they should go to the hospital first and deal with the aftermath later. Later, regarding the child's situation, both the kindergarten and the other parents bypassed Ellie and contacted Caleb. They praised Caleb, saying he was a broad-minded man who didn't hold grudges against children. Caleb felt Ellie was making a big deal out of nothing. When Ellie realized, Caleb had already said things like, "Her temper is not good, and she takes care of the child alone. Don't bother with her." Clearly, it was the other party's fault, but Caleb made it seem like Ellie was to blame. Ellie cried and shouted, but the other family came over, all making excuses for themselves. As the child's father, Caleb didn't show any concern for his child and sided with the other party. Ellie's voice became hoarse from crying and shouting. What should have been an external conflict somehow turned into an internal conflict. Caleb said the incident had happened, and they should look forward. The child still had to go to that kindergarten, and the kids still had to play together. Making it so awkward would affect the child in the future. Ellie said precisely because they had to interact, things couldn't be resolved so easily. Otherwise, others would think they were easy to bully, and there might be a next time. As soon as something happened, you acted like a deadbeat. You only want to be a good person, but when faced with issues, you shrink like a turtle. Caleb was also anxious, saying, "How did you become like this? How did you become such a shrew?" Ellie said, "I'm a shrew. I also want to be gentle and virtuous, but it depends on whether my man can handle things. You just want to be a good person. When there's trouble, you act like a turtle, unable to protect your wife and child. I have to step up to protect myself and my child. Then you say I'm a shrew?" Caleb felt a jab in his spine and couldn't contain his anger. The two pushed and shoved, had a heated argument for 2 days, and then cold-shouldered each other for half a month. Caleb felt that it couldn't go on, not even for a day. Before Ellie could suggest it, he took the initiative to suggest ending it. The house still had a mortgage, and the child was still young, so they could only split the money for now. Caleb had less than $100,000 in his account, his entire savings, and he transferred it all to Ellie without hesitation. Ellie accepted it without a word. Afterward, she continued to take care of the child and sell diapers, while Caleb continued to work and earn money. Previously, Caleb didn't let Ellie handle the money, thinking that diapers, milk powder, and the mortgage were all his responsibility, and there was no need to give Ellie the money. After receiving the money, Ellie became quieter, not caring about him anymore. However, she also stopped using harsh words to mock him. Spending money bought some tranquility, as if he had sought this tranquility. Now that it had come, he never brought up divorce again. The third time truly touched Caleb's raw nerve. The child was hospitalized for pneumonia, staying in the hospital for a week, and the expenses amounted to over $5,000. During this period, Ellie asked Caleb to pay the bills, and Caleb said, "The money is with you, where do I get it?" Ellie replied, "Don't you still have an outstanding debt of $10,000 outside?" Caleb explained, "I asked for it, but my buddy didn't have the money." Ellie retorted, "He got married, asked you for money for the dowry, and now his child is 2 years old. Still can't come up with $10,000? Did you really ask for it?" Caleb insisted, "I did ask for it, but he just had a car accident a few days ago, really has no money." Ellie questioned, "No money, how did he buy a car? Can't you see he's just making excuses?" Caleb was speechless. He did ask a few times, and every time he called, the other party cut him off with some excuse. Today, the wife had a miscarriage, tomorrow the child was sick, the day after tomorrow the father-in-law's funeral, all unfortunate events. When it came to the father-in-law's funeral, Caleb even had to chip in for the gift. When the child was discharged from the hospital, Ellie went directly to the other guy's house. After 2 years, she thought he couldn't possibly be unable to come up with this little money. But she underestimated the guy's shamelessness. As soon as he knew Ellie's purpose, the couple's faces fell to the ground. The woman said, "I really don't know about this. He didn't tell me." After saying that, she turned and locked herself in the bedroom. The man said, "Don't tell my wife about this. She really doesn't know." Ellie said, "See, we're really in difficulties. Our child had pneumonia. If not for that, I wouldn't have come." This falsely polite atmosphere, full of resentment, didn't last long before turning hostile. Ellie almost spat in the guy's face, and he wasn't polite either, bluntly stating that the money was borrowed from Caleb, and it wasn't Ellie's place to ask. When they were struggling together, Ellie didn't even know where she was. When the guy called Caleb to complain, Caleb was on the verge of going crazy. This damn woman, for $10,000, she had to ruin his years of brotherhood. Ellie, unwilling to back down, claimed that the money was part of their joint assets after marriage. Since she contributed $5,000, she was entitled to it. If he didn't give it, she would go to his house, his company, and even his wife's workplace to make a scene. Seeing that Ellie wasn't joking, Caleb softened his stance, saying, "I'll ask for it, you don't need to go." Ellie said, "Okay, but there must be evidence, electronic transfers with transaction receipts. If it's cash, there must be a video of you repaying the money." Caleb complained, "You don't trust me." Ellie affirmed, "Yes, I don't trust you." Since pretending seemed impossible, Caleb had no choice but to go and ask. The guy was also full of grievances, saying, "Is it worth your woman coming to ask for $10,000? Even in front of my wife, making me lose face?" Mumbling for an hour, not mentioning the repayment at all. Caleb thought, "Just transfer the money quickly, what's taking so long?" While speaking, he said sincerely, "You explain things well to your wife, I really didn't expect it to escalate like this, I'm sorry." Ellie rolled her eyes and said, "I'll still go to his house." Caleb, holding the phone, pleaded, "I beg you, don't make a scene. I can get the money back." In the end, the $10,000 was eventually recovered, thanks to Ellie going to the guy's house. Ellie said, "Either go to court or repay the money." The guy hadn't expected Ellie to be serious. Caleb, who had always been a taciturn person, someone who didn't know how to retaliate, surprised everyone. They said they never expected such a person to manage his wife so well, being so obedient. Now, with Ellie using this move, everyone's eyes were opened. Caleb lost face in front of his friends. Face was a man's life. Caleb seriously started considering the future of this marriage. The house, the child, he could let go of everything. During the dating period, he thought Ellie had a gentle and obedient temperament, but now it seemed all fake. Women were good at disguising themselves, deceiving the eyes of honest men. Moreover, his mother didn't like Ellie. Caleb complained to his mother about Ellie being rude and not understanding social manners. His mother said, "Didn't you choose her?" Caleb said, "I really don't want to live with her anymore." Caleb's mother heard the tone in his voice, remained silent for a while, and replied, "Let me make it clear in advance. If you look for someone else, I can't provide a dowry or take care of the child. I'm getting old." Caleb and Ellie finally didn't get divorced. They each had their own busy lives. Caleb took care of the mortgage and the child's school fees, while Ellie handled daily expenses. Like two parallel lines, they didn't intersect but coexisted peacefully, seemingly harmonious in content. As the child grew up, becoming sensible and well-behaved, Ellie enrolled him in several interest classes, and Caleb willingly covered the tuition. They attended parenting activities at institutions and kindergarten together, appearing to be a happy family of three. On the eve of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Caleb and his colleagues went to a restaurant to celebrate a colleague's grandson's full moon. Across the street from the restaurant was a large square where many people would bring their children for activities. While sitting on the second floor with his colleagues, someone pointed out, "Hey, isn't that your sister-in-law?" Caleb's colleagues had attended his wedding, and before the child was born, Ellie occasionally brought him meals during overtime. The colleagues recognized Ellie, and it was expected. Looking down through the glass, Caleb saw Ellie parking her electric tricycle by the roadside. A canopy had been added to the vehicle at some point, and their son got down from the car, helping Ellie unload boxes of diapers. After a short while, someone came to pick up the goods. After the delivery, Ellie, with her child in a bag, joined a crowd of people with kids. This was the first time Caleb witnessed Ellie doing promotional work up close. She held trial packages, continuously introduced them to people, and, upon reaching an agreement, took out her phone to exchange WeChat contacts. When Ellie was busy, her son obediently followed behind, with a long anti-loss rope wrapped around his arm. A colleague commented, "Look at your sister-in-law, and then at my lazy wife, sleeping till the sun is high, and even the meals have to be carried upstairs by my mom. It's no wonder you're fortunate, your sister-in-law is working so hard even as a single parent." Caleb mechanically picked at his food. The meal tasted bland. He felt like he was sitting on pins and needles, as if he were a criminal stripped naked and being executed, without dignity, without face. His colleague was clearly praising Ellie, but Caleb faintly sensed another layer of meaning. As a man, you really are useless. Under this scorching sun, letting your wife and child suffer like this. You're really bringing shame upon yourself. And Ellie, why did she have to come here of all places? Wasn't she blatantly making him embarrassed? The weather in summer changes quickly. During the meal, the sun was still shining brightly, but as the dinner was about to end, a sudden downpour ensued. Caleb excused himself to the restroom. Through the glass, he saw people hurriedly dispersing from the square. Ellie, in the pouring rain, picked up her child and ran towards the electric tricycle. From such a distance, Caleb could almost hear the sound of rainwater splashing out of Ellie's shoes. The rain was so heavy, riding the electric tricycle wasn't that stable. Throughout, Ellie never made a distress call. All of this, like a movie, played vividly in front of his eyes and in the eyes of his colleagues. Caleb felt his self-esteem as a man being washed away, turned into a puddle of mud, flowing into the drain along with the rainwater. Caleb decided to bring up the divorce with Ellie. Feeling embarrassed to talk face to face, he sent her a WeChat message, saying, "I've thought about it for a long time. I think we should get a divorce. You've been wanting this for a long time, haven't you? If you have any conditions, please let me know as soon as possible, and I'll try my best to meet them." Ellie quickly returned his call. Caleb hesitated, unsure how to start the conversation. The burden of not wanting to live a good life had already been thrown onto Ellie. He really didn't know what else to talk about with her. Should he say something like those celebrity divorce statements, suggesting that they should still be good friends and co-parent their child? Caleb found himself in a dilemma. If Ellie tried to persuade him to stay, he didn't know how to respond. If Ellie agreed, a simple response on WeChat would suffice. There was no need for a phone call that would make things awkward for everyone. Seeing that Caleb didn't answer, Ellie hung up and immediately called again. Caleb thought she probably didn't want a divorce, after all. As a woman with a child, life would be difficult without him as a support. But how did things get to this point? She constantly challenged his bottom line, being forceful and unreasonable, repeatedly causing him to lose face. Why couldn't she sell diapers somewhere else? Why did she have to do it right under his nose? How could he face people at work in the future? It might be better to just get a real divorce and explain it to his colleagues. Fine, he had to answer the phone. No matter how Ellie tried to persuade him, he, Caleb, had made up his mind to divorce. He reluctantly answered the call, and Ellie said, "Caleb, can we slow down on the divorce?" She really wanted to persuade him. Women, truly troublesome, Caleb thought. "We have a team-building activity for the diaper brand in Shanghai. I need to go there with the child. It might take 7 or 8 days before I can come back. Can we discuss the divorce after I return? You can write the divorce agreement first and send it to me. I promise to sign it as soon as I return. I won't keep you waiting for long. I really can't get out of it over here." After hanging up the phone, Caleb felt empty inside. Before taking this call, he thought he might lose a lot. After the call, he suddenly realized that he had nothing at all. He felt like a plant whose crown had been cut off, standing naked in the cold wind.